Everywhere you go, especially if you're a bimbler like me, you'll find listed buildings, the old stately homes and the quaint old cottages and the ancient churches. But what about the strange stuff, the odd stuff, the objet d'art, the curiously listed? Well, Lytham has loads of them. Let's bimble. And so our first port of call is just outside of the train station, a monument built to John Tolbert Clifton. He was the posh chap that used to live at Lytham Hall. More on that in a bit. John Tolbert Clifton was the MP for North Lancashire between 1844 and 1847. He was Justice of the Peace and the Deputy Lieutenant for Lancashire, as well as being High Sheriff of Lancashire in 1853. John married a lady, Eleanor Cicely Lowther, and that's why you have Lowther Gardens here in Lytham and the Lowther Pavilion. They were a posh family from Cumbria. Unfortunately, we won't be visiting Lowther Gardens today because there's nothing listed there. But it was opened in 1872 as a gift to Lytham from John Tolbert Clifton. It was all to celebrate Henry Lowther, Eleanor's brother, becoming the 3rd Earl of Lonsdale. But speaking of the Cliftons, we need to go to South Clifton Street. Let's bimble. Over on South Clifton Street, you have the Grade 2 listed former stables at the back of the Tolbert Hotel. The Tolbert Hotel being named after John Tolbert Clifton. They're having some work done to it, so let's let them get on with it and let's bimble. Is a market hall curiously listed enough? This one's Grade 2 listed, and it's of interest to me because it was designed by a chap called Charles Reed. Charles Reed is the man who designed the big house in Victoria Park in St Helens and Runcorn Town Hall, and he did some of the alterations to St Lawrence's Church in Chorley, where we've bimbled to in the past. Charles had his practice in Birkenhead on the Wirral, and he even has 2 roads named after him on the Wirral, in Clawton. He designed some villas in a new housing estate there for the posh well-to-dos of the Wirral. Those roads are called Charlesville and Reedville. The market hall here in Lytham was opened in 1848, but if that's not curiously listed enough, just outside of the market hall you'll find Lytham War Memorial, dedicated to the men who lost their lives in World War I. Let's bimble.
Skies and I'll take the grey. It's up to the weather, you know that I surely would say. She loves the. You can love the warm, that's okay. You can love the sun in every way. You can love the breeze and blow away. She loves the rain. She loves the. She loves the rain.
As far as curiously listed structures go here in Lytham, the Windmill's got to be the most famous. It's exactly what you think about when you think about Lytham. It was built in around 1805, a couple of decades before the Victorians came. The started promenading up and down the front. The Victorians loved the seaside, didn't they? A lot of the posh Victorians had posh Victorian houses built on the front, and like a lot of people who moved next door to something practical, they weren't very fond of the Windmill. But there wasn't a lot they could do. Its owner, Richard Cookson, had sought permission from the squire of the land, who would have been a member of the Clifton family. The Windmill ground oats and wheat for over 100 years, up until 1919, when it was hit by gale force winds. The brakes were applied to the sails, but the wind was so powerful that it could still turn the sails. The brakes inside were made out of wood, and they got incredibly hot, and eventually they set on fire, and everything inside the windmill was burnt out. In 1921, the husk of the windmill was donated to the people of Lytham by John Tolbert Clifton Jr. That's John Tolbert Clifton's grandson. In 1951, it was Grade 2 listed, and if that's not enough for you, just to the side of it is a Grade 2 listed lifeboat station. That was opened in 1851 by the Shipwreck Fishermen and Mariners Benevolent Society, but in 1854 it was handed over to the RNLI, the lifeboat people. Let's bimble.
Life was left alone in days that felt so long. Being on our own was irresistible. Thoughts kept to myself, shared with someone else, silently replied to most inaudible. Quiet imagination running away with me, secret conversations between you and me. Sometimes it was nice for a change.
A classic cast iron Victorian seaside promenade shelter, Grade 2 listed, all over the way from Lowther Gardens, with a lovely cafe and some interesting statues, but nothing listed. So it's onwards and upwards, bimblers.
Make believe this wasn't so strange. I'm telling you my secrets again. Imagine that you're still here with me. Imagine just how good that could be. I'm telling you my secrets again. I know it's just pretend, but I'm telling you my secrets again.
I've often wondered what this structure was on Lytham Promenade, as I've been passing by on my way into Blackpool, along the seafront. Wouldn't you love that as your man cave, or as a little office? Bimble HQ. It's a summer house or gazebo. The last time I was in a gazebo, it was one of them £20 ones from Asda, and I was at Leeds Festival drinking Strongbow. Not only is the gazebo listed, but separately listed is the wall on either side of it. 330 metres long, both of them Grade 2 listed. Let's bimble.
What a life to lead, played internally, presented just for me, but all controllable. Of course you're unaware of all this time we share.
This is St Cuthbert's Church here in Lytham. Grade 2, special interest. Nothing curious about that. But the curiously listed structures here at St Cuthbert's Church are in the churchyard itself. This is the third church to be built on this site, and this church was built in 1770 by a W.H. Hobden, That's William Henry Hobden. He was a Warrington lad just like me. The only other church I can see he did any work to was New Church in Culcheth. I believe that he renovated the old church at New Church in Culcheth before it burnt down in the early 20th century. But speaking of renovating, two of my favourites renovated St Cuthbert's Church. That's Paley and Austin. That's Edward Graham Paley and Hubert Austin. They apparently extended it and added the chancel. But enough of the church itself. What are these curiously listed items in the churchyard? Well, the most boring are the walls round the churchyard. They're Grade 2 listed. You also have a Grade 2 listed sundial just outside the door of the church. That was put there in the 1700s. And lastly, you have a monument to some men who died on a lifeboat trying to save the crew of a ship in 1886. On the 9th of December that year, they had some more of those gale force winds, and a ship called the Mexico ran aground at Ainsdale, just down from Southport. It's just over the River Ribble, if you think about it nautically. According to my big book of Bimble, the official one, available at Bimblism Live, 3 lifeboats were dispatched. That's the Charles Biggs from Lytham, over at the Lytham lifeboat station, which we've just visited, the Eliza Fernley from Southport, and the Laura Janet from St Anne's. Well, the crew of the Mexico were saved by the Lytham lifeboat, and the Southport lifeboat, well, only 2 of their crew survived and made it to dry land. But none of the crew of the Laura Janet, the St Anne's lifeboat crew, managed to make it back to shore. That's 13 men who died trying to save the crew of the Mexico. And for that, they get a Grade 2 listed monument in St Cuthbert's graveyard. Let's bimble.
What a life to lead, played internally, presented just for me, but all controllable. Of course you're unaware of all this time we share, and though you're never there, it's unstoppable. Quiet imagination running away with me, private conversations made secretively. Sometimes it was nice for a change, make believe this wasn't so strange. I'm telling you my secrets again. Imagine that you're still here with me. Imagine just how good that could be. I'm telling you my secrets again. I know it's just pretend, but I'm telling you my secrets again.
And so, Bimblers, we reach journey's end. Lytham Hall, Grade 1 listed. Nothing curious about that. It's exactly what you think about when you think about a listed building. The manor of Lytham was actually mentioned in the Domesday Book of 1086, but it was listed as Lytham with a D. From the 12th century, it was home to some Benedictine monks. But when Henry VIII came along and decided we weren't going to have monks anymore, it was bought by Richard Molyneux, the MP for Liverpool. In 1606, he sold it to the Clifton family. That would be Cuthbert Clifton. No doubt the reason why St Cuthbert's Church is just round the corner. The big posh Grade 1 listed hall was built between 1757 and 1764, and it was designed by a chap from Yorkshire called John Carr. John Carr designed Buxton Crescent and Assembly Rooms, and he also designed Tabley Hall in Cheshire. On top of that, he was Lord Mayor of York twice. That was in 1770 and 1785. According to my big book of Bimble, Cuthbert Clifton passed the hall down to Thomas Clifton. Thomas to John, John to Thomas Joseph, and Thomas Joseph gave way to John Tolbert Clifton, and John Tolbert Clifton passed it down to his grandson, John Tolbert Clifton. He would have only have been 14 years old when he inherited all of this. He was your typical posh lad. He liked to go all around the world shooting stuff and eating it. He ate Canadian marmot and Siberian sheep, which became known as Clifton Bighorns. He's even said to have ate a mammoth. They found it in the permafrost in the Arctic. It's a bit like finding a lamb shank in the back of your freezer, but a woolly mammoth. I imagine it tasted horrible. But what are the curiously listed bits and pieces here at Lytham Hall? Well, you have the stable blocks. They're grade 2 listed. And you also have a dovecot. That's grade 2 listed special interest. A dovecot is where you would keep your doves and pigeons. Pot fact, what we call a pigeon, those birds in your town centre, they're not actually a pigeon, they're a rock dove. Get your facts straight. That dovecot is closely guarded by Gromit from Wallace and Gromit. He's riding a moped. Of course, the entrance gate to the hall that we passed on our way in, that's grade 2 listed. And in one of the gardens, they have a grade 2 listed statue of Diana the Huntress. That's a Roman god. Apparently that statue was bought in Greece by one of the Cliftons. No doubt they went to Greece to shoot something and eat it. Mammoth kebabs, something like that. On top of all that, you have loads of gates, loads of fences and loads of walls, all grade 2 listed. It's a curiously listed wonderland. We could have done this episode just at Lytham Hall. Save myself a load of messing.